Why does someone seem obsessed with you one day and emotionally distant the next? Why do some women suddenly change their behavior without warning? Why does attention sometimes feel like affection but later turn into confusion? Before we begin, let's make one thing clear. This video is not about attacking women. Not all women behave this way, and men can absolutely use similar psychological tactics too. But today, we are exploring something rarely talked about: the hidden psychological patterns behind certain female behaviors in relationships. And by the end of this video, you will understand the emotional games, manipulation tactics, and red flags many people fail to recognize until it is too late. First, let's define what we mean by dark psychology. Dark psychology is not magic. It is not mind control. It is the use of emotions, attention, confusion, and influence to gain emotional power in relationships, sometimes intentionally, sometimes subconsciously. And here's what makes it dangerous. Most emotional manipulation does not feel like manipulation at first. It feels like attraction, connection, chemistry, until suddenly things start changing. And that leads us to the first psychological pattern. Have you ever experienced this? One day she's texting constantly, interested, excited, then suddenly cold, distant, unavailable. Psychologists often call this intermittent reinforcement, a pattern where affection becomes unpredictable, and strangely, unpredictability can create stronger emotional attachment. Why? Because the human brain becomes obsessed with uncertainty. When someone becomes emotionally inconsistent, you stop focusing on reality and start chasing validation. But the truth is, sometimes this behavior is intentional, sometimes it's emotional confusion, and sometimes it's emotional immaturity. The real question is this: does the pattern repeat consistently? Because repeated confusion is often a major red flag. Now, let's talk about emotional testing. Why do some women test men emotionally? Sometimes it comes from insecurity, sometimes curiosity, and sometimes a desire for emotional control. For example, a woman may suddenly act distant, cancel plans unexpectedly, or create emotional tension just to see how you react. Will you panic, become needy, or remain emotionally calm? This is where many people fail, because emotional reactions often reveal emotional weakness. Another common behavior is mixed signals: interest without clarity, attention without commitment, effort followed by distance. And psychologically, mixed signals can create emotional addiction. Because uncertainty increases emotional investment. The less predictable something becomes, the more attention we give it. Now, let's talk about something uncomfortable: attention. In modern dating, attention has become emotional currency, and some people learn how to use it. A woman may enjoy emotional validation without wanting commitment. She may keep someone emotionally interested without fully investing emotionally. Why? Because validation feels rewarding. Compliments, attention, emotional reassurance, these things can become psychologically addictive. But here is the warning sign. If someone enjoys your attention but avoids emotional responsibility, you may be trapped inside an emotional loop, and emotional loops are exhausting. Now let's discuss darker patterns: silent treatment. This happens when communication suddenly disappears, not for emotional space, but for emotional punishment. The goal? To create anxiety, confusion, and emotional dependence. Then there is guilt tripping, making someone feel responsible for everything, even things that are not entirely their fault. Phrases like, "You do not care about me anymore," "You have changed," "You always disappoint me." Over time, guilt can become emotional control, and perhaps one of the most dangerous tactics, gaslighting. This happens when someone manipulates your perception of reality. You remember something clearly, but suddenly you hear, "That never happened." You are overthinking. You are imagining things. Eventually, you begin doubting yourself. And once self-doubt begins, manipulation becomes much easier.
But here's an uncomfortable truth. Not every confusing behavior is manipulation. Sometimes emotional distance comes from fear, past trauma, emotional confusion, or unhealthy attachment patterns. And this is important to understand, because not every confusing person is evil. Sometimes people are simply emotionally damaged. But psychology teaches us something powerful. Healthy people communicate. Unhealthy patterns create repeated confusion. If someone constantly disappears, withdraws affection, or repeatedly makes you question your emotional worth, pay attention. Patterns matter more than excuses. So what are the biggest red flags? Someone who constantly creates emotional confusion, gives affection only when convenient, makes you feel guilty all the time, avoids accountability, or keeps you emotionally attached without giving clarity. And most importantly, watch how someone behaves during conflict, because that is where true character reveals itself. So how do you protect yourself? Do not chase confusion. Watch actions, not words. Set emotional boundaries, and never ignore repeated patterns, because emotional manipulation only works when confusion becomes normal. Understanding psychology is not about blaming women, it's about understanding human behavior, because once you understand patterns, you stop taking everything personally and start seeing relationships more clearly. So, tell me in the comments, what psychological behavior confuses people the most in modern dating? And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more psychology-based content.